I guess, I grew up in sports, and when I saw my kids on the athletic field, there are a lot of things about the youth sports environment that are not so healthy these days. And when the information about preventing injuries came to me, I guess I just sort of had a moment where there was a kid that went down on the ground with a significant injury. And I said, I can't stand on the sidelines and watch this if there's something I can do about this. So I'm not sure that's when it became my passion, but that's when that was the flip, the switch that said, something's got to be done, and if you know how to do it, you need to figure out how to do it well. The goal in training. Well, I like the word fitness better than training. Fitness is such a great word. But I don't think it hangs out there on its own. It's fit for what? And a lot of parents that I talk with, they say things about youth sports and how it's not safe and there's injuries going on out there, and they say, can we just bubble wrap our kids? Seen those videos where the guys are in the bubbles, walking around out there playing the game out there. That's not the way the game is played. And not only that, but it sends the message, we're afraid you're going to get hurt, so let's bundle you up so that nothing possibly can happen to you. And it's an interesting question, actually, because that actually on the outside is probably a lot of what's happening on the inside, that parents want to make sure that their kid doesn't get hurt, doesn't have anything go wrong, doesn't have anything happen that might disappoint them. And that's actually, I think, part of the difficulty that we have in youth sports with, in other settings, the helicopter or snowplow parents that, pave the way to keep their kids safe. I think we want to control the environment so that it's as safe as it can be. Sports will always have risk. Sports has always had risk. You entertain that idea when you take the field. You want to keep them as safe as you can. If we could administer just a little bit of risk at a time and let them make their way so that they can see themselves capable, that would be the best of both worlds. And that's what I recommend with the training in the book, and I think teaching in general. You let them grasp a little bit higher, and they see themselves capable and confident, and that's how they grow in the game and in life and in their intellect and their academics and their relationships and everything else.
So as I'm hearing you,
when I drive to Flores Church proper, Flores Church anywhere, I'll pass athletic fields with kids out there playing on a Sunday morning. And I've been in an awful lot of church environments when I say, I saw those kids having a game on a Sunday morning. And most church people will say, yeah, they should be in church on Sunday. We shouldn't allow them to do that. And I say, but I'm that kid. I was that kid. I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up in the athletic field. It was those coaches that, helped me along, or those, players and parents that taught me how to deal with, difficult circumstances and winning and losing, and, how to make a team or not make a team. So, if you want to bring people to church, the place to find them on a Sunday morning is probably not in church. And I know the language of those kids on the athletic field. I also find that, actually one of my first blog posts, one of my first devotional articles was, I titled it, God Speaks Sports Even on Sunday. And I took the 12 commandments and I related them to how I learned each of those principles on the athletic field. I found that when I came to faith later, in my 20s and 30s, it made sense to me because I understood the principles that I'd learned in athletics. Do not covet. He won the trophy. Don't sit there and say, you should have won the trophy because. It's the similar principle, but it made sense because I already knew it. And it was truth to me. So when God said it, it just made sense. So I can trust that when I'm talking to him on the field about not cheating, not lying, not stealing the grace, passing the ball, not being, proud of what you do, but being part of a team, that's all part and parcel. To me, that's speaking faith to them. If not now, then it's going to be later, when it comes to them in a different zone. Most kids, to develop their potential, they just need a little bit more every day, and that's true with all of us in terms of our relationship and our understanding. What I understand today, it's because I learned something about it yesterday that makes it make sense to me today. Even tough things, you go through tough things in your life, and you realize that it was that prepared me for this moment, this conversation, this person, this opportunity, which are things that also can be scary. We tend to, I think, in our culture, we celebrate winners, people who have competed well, and I think that's a good thing to be able to do. But when we see those champions out on the field, we don't see all the years of practice and all the years of training and the practicing good nutrition and good health and good stretching and listening to instructions and all the things that athletes have to do to become successful athletes. You don't see all that, but you do have to live all that if you want to end up to be like that person. The spiritual disciplines are important to me now. I didn't know what they were when I started out as a Christian. I probably then asked, the most important spiritual discipline for me then was asking questions. I've always been a curious person, and that's part of, I think, why it's important for me. It's fun for me to be a teacher, or even to be in a conversation where people have questions. Because I've always been that person too, so I'm not scared of having somebody ask that question. It's small groups. I've served in various capacities. I'd say I wasn't I wasn't so good at that. I'd say that the temptation, the church can be a very comfortable, cushy place. You're affirmed and you're welcomed and you're celebrated there when you run Vacation Bible School 3 years in a row or whatever. The world doesn't celebrate you very much, oftentimes. And so, if you have to choose, I'm going to be at the church where everybody says, hey, you're great, or you're going to be at home where everybody says, how come dinner isn't ready? The balance can tip. And, I think, keeping both of those in perspective and realizing that just being in the church and doing church work isn't your total journey of faith, that's an important thing. I've, I think, come more comfortable that I really don't have to say a whole lot about what I know about the Lord of my life. I think the same with writing. The less you say and the more clearly you live it, the more believable it is. What I'll tell you about the writing, the funny thing about the writing is it's completely a mystery to me, because I'm not trained as a writer. And in some ways, that answers your question. I started to be a writer because I wrote notes to people, and people said, that was really a blessing. Or, I got a lot of notes, but what you said really struck me. And those were just words. I didn't do anything different with those than other things. But, I guess sort of God and I had a conversation, and I said, what, if you're using my words for something that you want me to do, then it's due diligence for me to become as good a writer as I can. So I took some online writing courses, and I began writing. Now, I practiced journaling it didn't start out as a spiritual discipline. It is now, I think. I was putting words on paper mostly so I could figure out what I was thinking. That's how I know. Not so much the talking, but the writing. But that wasn't for publication. That was just, figuring it out. It boils down to, I think, being a moving forward person. If anything, that's my responsibility, right, is not to stay in place. If there's a direction I'm supposed to go, the best way to get there is by moving. I don't always move directly forward. I move sideways, but it goes back to how I relate to the world. If I'm playing tennis against someone, if I think their forehand is their weak stroke, I'm going to try a few on that side and see if that works. And so God just sort of speaks those analogies to me. I try stuff, and if it doesn't work, I try it a different way. But that's just how it makes sense to me. It's funny. Some people would say I'm a disciplined person. Other people would probably more correctly say that I'm concerned about making sure that I do things just the right way, and there's probably a little bit of both. The Christian life, it's in some ways it's getting away from that notion that people are expecting you to do it just right, and come to terms with He's patient with you to get it okay today and better tomorrow and the next day. I think that's nice about the small groups is, it's, kind of come as you are. They take you, they help you, they speak honestly to you. I think it's important that we surround ourselves with people who will, give us the honest lowdown in a loving way. I don't think we always get that, out there in the world.
Wendy, it doesn't surprise me, and you've hit on this a little bit, but I just want to make sure we get this point because it's pretty important. You are a team person. You've played team sports for quite some time. You've done so many things on a team. Why not approach the Christian life alone? Why do it? Why do it in groups? Why did you, somebody stepping into the church in your 20s,
Mm-hmm.
Why did you ever decide to say, all right, I want to do this journey with other people? I mean, part of the thought today is that you can do it all on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need anybody else. That the church isn't helpful. The church as community is not necessary. But everything I know about you is in the opposite experience. Why is that for you?
Well, you don't know everything about me then, too. I think there's a place for, solitude. And I am absolutely one who needs that time. In fact, that's where I recharge my batteries. That's the journaling I do. When I go out for a run, I don't usually run with a group. That time when my body is sort of on autopilot, my brain can run free, and I find that that's creative time for me. It's some of why I wrote the book. I mean, I could write and be a solo practitioner out there, and I only reach the number of kids I train. But if I can put into writing what I do and how I do it, then I can hand that to other people so they can distribute it to their team so other kids can be healthy, and it can be, on and on. I don't know, the team approach, it's just safer, frankly, Tim, to do things as a group. I had an important person in my life tell me that, when you keep it inside, it's in the dark and you only have one perspective. It's tricky, when you're in a group, you take some and you leave some. You don't just sit there and let people bash you and say, you shouldn't be doing it that way. And thank goodness I had people early in my journey who didn't take the things that I was doing totally wrong and say, Wendy, you're completely off base, turn around 180 degrees and march back to, square one. They were patient with me, and I found bits and pieces of ways that I got better. But I did small group studies all year long for at least a dozen years in a row, starting with Disciple One. I led some of those classes. I feel strongly that the leader of those classes is a facilitator. They're not a teacher. I think a lot of people are reluctant to lead classes because they think they have to know all the material and have all the answers. I actually don't like to be in classes with people who know all the answers, because where's the work for me to do then? And even if I walk out with the answers, I don't feel confident that I know them and can use them and apply them. But in a group of people, I always find there's perspective that I never would have had, and examples I never would have had, and they give me perspective on me, because frankly I can't see myself, but they can. And the nonverbal says a lot, and people who know me well, can speak truthfully to me and say, Wendy, this is not your issue. You're not going to be able to fix this. You need to move on. I need somebody to tell me that sometimes. I think probably most of us do. But also, Wendy, you're capable, you're smart, you know this, go ahead and move forward with this. That actually may have been the tougher thing for me. You asked me about not signing your book, right? That's uncomfortable for me to sign the book, not because I'm not proud of it or I didn't write it, but putting my signature on something that's God's work, that's a tricky thing to be able to do. But we all do that with our lives, right? I do find, people say the youth sports, I just identified myself as a youth sports advocate. That's what I, put in my little tag. And that because I grew up in sports. But people say it's the win at all cost culture or it's the competitive culture. So if we just took that out, we took out the competition and we took out the win at all cost, all would be well. But I know, I mean, what's the point in playing a game if there isn't someone playing against me? You know, I can throw the ball up against the wall, or I can play against someone who gives me a challenge. The translation in competition is you don't strive against, you strive with. Your opponent is what makes you better. So without competition, we don't discover how much better we can be. The winning, I mean, we keep a score, we have an opponent, so you know the competition, you have a winner and a loser. You know, everybody learns how to be both. On any given weekend where you've got lots of tournament games, there's only one team that wins. I don't think trying to win is the wrong thing. I think trying to assure that you're on the winning team is a dangerous thing. And so people do all sorts of things to try to be on the winning team, including cheating and changing teams, and those things bring out a negative side of our nature. That's our human nature. And so we're not going to be saved from that by taking away winning or competition. I think those things, rightly handled, can bring us, make us better and better people. If I care about somebody and want them to be better people or better competitors, then I'm going to help them learn how to be prepared to compete, to show up on game day and be prepared for the opponent. I mean, the real world is there's an opponent. We have to be ready to meet that opponent. But how are you going to play when you know that the victory's already been won, right? Now, we don't lay down on the field and say, God, take care of this for us, right? We still play, but we play differently because we know that in the end, we don't lose. What I find with kids is they have trouble identifying what they bring to the team, especially the kids who may not see themselves as big contributors. So even just sitting down with kids and saying, you know what, you're fast. You know what, you're funny. You like to stop the ball with your hands. We can use that. Every time you get the ball, you look to see if you have an open teammate. I mean, all of those things are life skills. But forming a team around, I think coaches make a mistake sometimes. They say, I'm going to play this style of play, and so I need this kind of kids. And I think what we need are coaches who see what kind of kids they have and then form a team that's successful with the skills that they have available. Because they probably didn't come to him accidentally. So, no question. I mean, especially too if you've been turned away from somewhere because you don't fit the bill. It's pretty tough to come back. A kid who comes to a team and nobody passes them the ball that day. A person who comes to church and nobody says hello or shakes their hand, they're not coming back. But somebody who gets to know you, even if you don't contribute on the field that day, if so-and-so says, hey, I hope to see you next time, whether it's on the field or anywhere else in life, it's going to make it a whole lot more likely that you'll find a place to fit. I think sometimes people come with preconceived notions that need a certain skill set to work. I have all sorts of funny stories about sitting down with kids and asking them what their goals were. One kid said her goal was to learn how to play goalkeeper. And this kid, in my mind, did not belong in the goal. Not good hands, not aggressive, whatever. And I said, why? What? That's interesting. What makes you? She said, well, it's the only thing I don't know how to play yet. I thought, So these kids aren't good at identifying what they do bring. Maybe they haven't been affirmed in that. Or maybe they have preconceived notions about if I'm not this kind of kid, that I don't belong in this game. There's some game. There's some game for those kids. Some kids, individual sports, are probably, the right thing for them, well supported.